WTV Associate News Director, heard she was being honored tonight, he sent us a message from his home in Kentucky. Ray says, "It was a delight to be able to work with her. She was a solid journalist who took nothing for granted. She dug deep into stories, tenaciously searching for the truth while remaining fair and balanced. There are many in our craft today who could take a clue or two from her example." Please welcome the Omaha Press Club Journalists of Excellence Hall of Fame, a dear friend, Ann Pedersen.
Well, thank you, Gary, for that very nice introduction, and thank you, Eileen, for including me in your book detailing the contributions of women in Nebraska in journalism, and congratulations to all my fellow inductees. When Kay Chris called to tell me that I was going to be added to the Hall of Fame, I have to admit I was almost speechless, and as most of you know, that's quite unusual. I am truly humbled by this honor. Before I go any further, though, I want to recognize two people in this room. First of all, Carrie Gleason, who was born in March of 1983. That would be between the February and May book. And Elizabeth Gleason, who was born in December of 1985. That would be after the November book. So you see, they were little broadcast journalists from the very beginning. They loved coming to the station. They loved thinking they knew what was going on before anybody else. And they were always understanding when I was late or had to leave a program early, although they did keep mentioning that their nannies always seem to be. My girls enhance everything in my life, and I couldn't imagine living without them. My first television job was an internship at KHOL TV, but my dream jobs were always on the other side of the planet, like New York or LA or Minneapolis. But it was KHOL that assigned me to fill in for a woman who wanted to take the summer off and spend time with her family. It was KHOL that allowed me to shoot some film, some of which even had images on it. It was pesky Bellin Howells. And KHOL that assigned me to anchor the noon news, weather, and farm report, despite the fact that I often confused Idaho for Ohio and I didn't know a barrel from a kilt. But Arnold explained that to me. When I was hired at WOWT, I was sure that I was hired because I was a woman. Because, after all, every station needed one. Roseanne was at KMTV, and Sue Wolf was at KETV, and I was lucky enough to end up at WOWTV. We used to laugh when people would confuse us because someone would say "Oh, you're Sue Wolf, aren't you?" And I would say, "Well, I'm 5'10", she's 5'2", but we're close." Or Roseanne would say, "Yes, no, I'm not Roseanne Pedersen, I'm Roseanne Shannon." We were something of a novelty back then, but not according to my boss and mentor, Steve Murphy, who, when the World Herald called to ask about this new novel idea of hiring a woman reporter, he said, "She's just one of the boys." And lest the feminists in the room worry about that comment, it was not a dig. It would mean that I was going to be treated no differently than anyone else in the newsroom. I would cover my share of boring meetings, action-packed fires, and tedious political events the same as anyone else. I worked in a newsroom with some of the best reporters in town, and I competed against two stations that were equally well-staffed with top-of-the-line journalists, and it made for a wonderful experience. And when the news was put to bed, we would all gather at the embassy on occasion or maybe somebody's apartment building and talk about the day's news, and once a year we would watch the outtakes of our work assembled, and it was called "So You Want to Be a Newsman." truly was one of the best times to work in journalism. Allow me a minute to acknowledge some of those journalists who truly did make me a better person and certainly a better journalist. Steve Murphy, Ray Deppa, Walt Dean, my two first and best friends, Ray Matoyer and Steve Schweers. The photographers who taught me to write to the pictures, please, guys like Bob Mokler, Tim Rock, Michael Myrador, and men and women who followed me in my newsroom, Jan Rasmussen, Carrie Brock, Mike McKnight, Jim Moore, Ken Vest, Bill Kelly, Aida Amora, Mike Plews, Dave Hamer, Arlo Grafton, names that I'm sure all of you recognize as really top of the line journalists. There was one other who came after me. He goes around town telling everyone that I was the other Ann who hired him, and I did, John Prescott. There were a few other women in the building whose friendship prevented a newsroom testosterone overdose. Judy Horan in promotion, Ruth Williams in community service, who my children call Twa because she is their third grandmother. And then the woman in the newsroom who preceded us all and knew where every skeleton was buried, Jan Colandino. All of those individuals and so many more share this honor with me tonight. Thank you to the Omaha Press Club Foundation for this perfectly wonderful honor. I will treasure it always, and perhaps those of you members of the Press Club will now forgive me for suggesting we tear out the fireplace and the round bar. Vice President.